Welcome back. We're joined now by Ted Bidon from Montana's Department of Insurance. Ted is here to talk about how to prevent healthcare fraud. Thanks, Ted, for being with us.
Happy to be with you.
Good. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about are the statements that Medicare members get. Is it a good idea, in your opinion, for them to read through or vet what is on those statements and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you get mailing in regards to the medical services, make sure you do read everything thoroughly.
Okay.
When you get specifically the explanation of benefits, or more commonly called an EOB, I'll just call it that.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to remember. Make sure you look at those. On the EOB, it's going to tell what services were done and what the proper charges should be.
Okay.
And you want to use that before you make any bill payments. And we can talk more about that. Yeah.
Okay. So when you're looking at those statements, what specifically should people be cluing in on?
You know, that's a great question. You want to check the date of service. It's usually the first thing that I look at is, does it match with when I went to see my medical provider?
Okay.
Then you want to look at the type of service. What was it? What does it show that the service was done? If it was just an office visit or an x-ray, you want to check those and make sure that that's accurate. And then look at the charges and make sure, you may not agree with the price per se,
Right.
but make sure that you look at the charges and see if they look like they are appropriate. And your EOB is going to have all of that information on there, and you'll carefully want to match that to any billing statements that you receive from your medical provider.
Okay, that's great to know. So if somebody finds something that they think is incorrect, what should they do?
Well, yeah, that's a great thing to consider. If you have something that, if you receive a medical bill or the EOB and it looks like it's incorrect, the first thing that you should do is contact the medical provider.
Okay.
Sometimes they've just got a billing error and it needs to be corrected. Have your EOB with you, bring that with you, and have your bill with you, and then speak to their billing department and say if the date of service is wrong or the service type is wrong, bring that up to them so they can submit a corrected claim and get that taken care of. I recommend that no one pays their medical bill until the EOB is correct, because that shows what your member responsibility is, your portion.
So if they've gone to the provider and still are not comfortable that it's correct, is there somebody else that they could be talking with?
Yeah, they definitely got some options there.
Okay.
If they're on the regular Medicare plan with like a MedSup with that, they can contact Medicare and express their concerns there as well. And they can take a look at it and make sure that everything's correct. Ultimately, if you're going with an in-network provider or a provider that has agreed to Medicare services and accept Medicare, whatever that EOB says is what your responsibility is, and they've agreed in a contract to that. So if it says you owe zero, then you owe zero, and hold your ground on that. Don't be afraid to be persistent and work through that process. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We've heard of a phenomenon called double billing. Can you explain, first of all, what that is, and is it a type of fraud or not?
That's a good question. Double billing is when a medical provider bills for the same service twice. So let's just say, for instance, you went for an office visit and they billed for that office visit twice. Oftentimes, it's just an error, a billing error, where they've made a mistake. Sometimes they'll submit a claim, they don't hear back, so they resubmit the claim a second time, and it gets processed twice. That can happen. And that's why you want to really keep track and make sure you've got your records in order. If the provider is doing it intentionally and billing for that service twice intentionally, then that would be considered a type of fraud and something that needs to be brought forward. And Medicare is really capable of handling that, and we'll be able to address that.
Okay, so keeping records is key so that you can match up.
It really is. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right, so then there's another phenomenon called unbundling, and that's different than double billing or double.
It is.
So can you explain to us what unbundling is?
Yes.
And if that's fraud or not?
That's a good question. Billers in offices, they can be very creative
Okay.
on figuring out how they can generate a little more revenue.
Okay.
And sometimes they will unbundle services. And what that simply means is they'll separate out a service.
Okay.
Let's say you go to get a blood work done. Well, they'll separate out the blood draw, the actual blood draw, from the lab work, from the whatever else is involved, and they'll bill all of those individually.
Okay.
And they'll unbundle them so that they can bill a higher amount.
Oh, okay.
Typically, your insurance company, or if it's Medicare, they'll recognize that and they'll bundle them back together.
Oh.
And you'll see that language, though, on your EOB. It'll say services were unbundled, and they'll rebundle them together. Okay. It's not fraud.
Okay.
They can bill that way, but it usually gets caught by the insurance. If your medical provider says that you need to pay for those unbundled services, even though your EOB says that you don't, that would be an issue. You do not need to pay for those services if they've been rebundled by the insurance company.
Okay, perfect. So you've kind of given us some indications of situations that could potentially be fraud. Could you tell us a little bit about insurance fraud in the state of Montana? Is it a real concern?
It is. It does happen. There hasn't been anything real big or anything that's really trending right now in Montana, but nationally there have been some issues that have come up. For instance, our neighbor in Idaho. I know that you guys have talked a little bit about SHIP, the state health insurance program, and the assistance that they provide. Well, they have the same service in Idaho. And what happened in Idaho was that people were calling and asking for information saying they were with SHIP. And it's also happened where they've called and asked for information saying they were with the Department of Insurance, asking for medical information, asking for personal information that they shouldn't be giving out. Either SHIP or Department of Insurance, we would never do an outbound call where we would request your personal information. Okay. So if that were to happen, we'd want you to report that to us. Okay. Definitely.
Perfect. I think we're going to have to leave it on that, but that's a really good tip to leave it on, to contact SHIP or your office.
Yes.
So I want to thank you so much, Ted, for being with us and giving us some really great information.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd also like to thank Kimmy as well. I hope you at home enjoy our show. See you next week. In the meantime, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. Special thanks to Fire Tower Coffee House and Roasters. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.